It's 6 a.m. Your alarm is blaring. It's time to go to work. You know the feeling. You want to stay in bed, but you need to pay your damn bills. But what if I told you you could make money while you sleep and finally quit your job?
Wait, what? How? Is that you, Morgan Freeman?
Yes,
Huh.
it is I, Morgan Freeman.
Huh.
Pay attention. It's easy.
Okay. Hey friends, Vincent here. I'm gonna tell you quite literally the most passive income stream that you can start with just a click of a button. You can set it up and forget it for decades from day one, and it'll still generate you money even when you're...
The ultimate goal in personal finance
Wait, what?
is generating enough passive income
Okay.
to cover your living expenses.
Yeah, I agree. And if you can reach that point, you can do whatever you want, like quit your job and travel the world. And if you have a more appealing financial goal, I'd love to hear it. Go on. Comment below. Now, this plan to achieve financial freedom is simple and doable as long as you remain consistent. This strategy is one of the most reliable, time-tested ways to make money without doing anything, and that is through dividend investing. It's as passive income can literally get. Dividend investing is simple. It's the stock market's equivalent of you owning rental properties where you collect rent payment, except you don't need $200,000 down payment. New York and California. You can actually get started with as little as $1.
Dividend investing can be boiled down to you buying shares in a company that pays a dividend.
Each share you buy is a tiny slice of the company, and a dividend is a portion of that company's profit that they give to you, the shareholder. Your dividend is typically a cash payout, and the amount that you get is dependent on the dividend yield and the number of shares that you hold, which I'll talk about exactly how much you need to dividend stocks to be financially free. The dividend yield is just a percentage that tells you how much cash the company will pay you in dividends every year. For example, if company ABC has a share price of $100 and the dividend yield is 5%, then your dividend or cash payout is $5 per year. Now, $5 a year doesn't sound like anything, but remember, in this example, you've only invested $100. What if instead you had $100,000 invested with a dividend yield of 5%? That's an extra $5,000 in cash that you would get each year without doing anything. But here's actually a secret way to supercharge how much you can get paid. Let me ask you, when you get paid the dividends, what are you gonna do with the money? Sure, you can spend it on 5,000 cheeseburgers from McDonald's, but, and hear me out here, what if you decide to reinvest that money back into your dividend stocks? You can use the $5,000 to buy more shares, and the next time you get paid, your payout will be even higher, thanks to the power of compound interest. Albert Einstein once said, compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't should probably subscribe to Vincent Chan on YouTube, or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact quote he said. Use compound interest to build a crazy dividend generating machine that will supercharge your path to financial freedom from just buying dividend stocks. Super passive, super easy. But there are two huge disadvantages that I'll tell you about later.
Now here's how much you need to live off your dividends and get paid while you're sleeping.
Remember, the goal is to generate enough passive income to cover your living expenses. So let's first figure out how much you spend in a year on average. In the US, the average person spends around $63,000 a year. Let's round up to $70,000 to play it safe, which means it's around $5,800 per month. We'll also assume an average 5% dividend yield across your investments. So to get paid $100 a year, you need to invest $2,000. To make $1,000 a year, you need to invest $20,000. And since we're aiming for $70,000 a year, you'll need $1.4 million invested. Now, that's a ton of money, and depending on your financial situation, could seem impossible. But before you give up and start to throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care, there's something else that I haven't told you yet that makes this whole thing a lot easier and quicker. But first, remember, dividend investing is a long-term strategy. Just like you don't expect to get to the Tootsie Center of a Tootsie Pop in a day, it's gonna take work.
Mr. Turtle, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I never made it.
Now, the secret I haven't told you yet is called dividend growth rate, because most companies each year actually raise their dividends. So you're not always just working with a 5% dividend yield every single year. It could increase to 6, 7, even 8%. And while past results don't guarantee future outcomes, many companies have ended up doubling their dividends in 5 to 10 years. So with this new strategy revealed, let's see how much faster it'll actually take now. Let's say you invested $100,000 with a 5% yield, so you get paid $5,000 a year. Let's say over the next 5 to 10 years, you kept holding your shares and the company increased the dividend, so it's now paying twice as much as when you first bought your shares. Your $5,000 a year dividend payment is now $10,000 a year. And if this is the case, then you actually only need $700,000 invested in your dividend stocks instead of the $1.4 million, assuming you invested 10 years ago. And here's where it gets really interesting. I'll even share some specific reputable companies that have been increasing their dividend yield every single year for the past 25 years, so you can look in the right direction. Quit your job and get paid while you sleep in no time. But first, if you're like me and you find it challenging to stay updated with the market news every day because there's so much to read, then good news, no pun intended. I created Daily Market Briefs, a newsletter that highlights the most important market news for you every morning so you can read it in under 1 minute. Sign up for free down below.
Hold up, to maximize my dividend payout, I can just pick the stocks with the highest dividend yield. Then they'll speed this whole process up.
That's a great idea. Not. That's called yield chasing. And while a lot of finance influencers love to talk about this, it's extremely risky and dangerous because extremely high yields could mean that there's something really bad happening with the company. Now, I won't get into what the details of this is, but just stay cautious of people who only talk about yield chasing. What you want to look for instead are healthy, growing companies with strong fundamentals. And the easiest way to get started is to look for these things called dividend aristocrats. They're a very unique group of companies coming from royalty that have increased their annual dividend every single year for at least 25 consecutive years. And of course, historical performance is not indicative of future results, but chances are it's a good first filter. But, and this is a strong but, don't just blindly pick any of these and invest in. You'll want to look deeper into the company's growth and their financial health to see if it's still a good opportunity. The main reason is just because they're aristocrats, there are still risk involved, especially if you're only investing in 1 or 2 of them, which then you'll be way too exposed if one of them goes down, and then chances are you're gonna panic, and then
you're gonna have a bad time.
And that's where the beautiful word of diversification comes in. Invest across multiple companies, so even if a few goes down, hopefully the others can provide some cushion. Or an even easier strategy is to look at these things called dividend index funds. You can imagine an index fund is just someone like a fund manager who buys a bunch of individual stocks and they put them into a single basket. And that basket now has value from the stocks. Then you and other people want to buy ownership into the basket. So now you own a percentage of everything inside that basket without actually owning any stock. That basket is the index fund. And the advantage is that you only need to make one investment into the basket and not several into individual stocks. So it's easier to get started and to manage for the long term. 2 examples of really popular indices are VIG, the Vanguard Dividend Appreciation Index Fund, or VYM, the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF. These indices generally track really big companies that offer a decent dividend yield. But remember, do your own research before you buy or sell anything. Now, dividend investing is not all peachy keen. It's not for everyone and is really dependent on your investment goals. There's also 2 major disadvantages that you need to know before you even consider dabbling in this space. First is dividend stocks are not tax efficient, especially when we compare them to regular stocks. Because what's better than getting taxed once? Getting taxed twice. Huh?
That was a joke.
If the company decides to pay dividends, then it's taxed twice. The first tax happens at company's year end when it pays taxes on earnings. Then the second tax happens when you receive the dividend from the company and you have to pay income tax on it. Think of it like this. You get home from work with a nice fat paycheck, which is already tax deducted. And then you decide to give your dog some money because he's been a really good boy. And at that moment, someone from the IRS steps in and takes some of that money, then gives the rest to your dog. Crazy, right? Taking money from a dog.
The second disadvantage will require some thought. Think about why these companies are paying dividends.
Remember, dividends are a portion of a company's profit, and usually it's old companies that give it dividends, companies that already ran most of its course and are now just stable. And I emphasize this because If the company had an amazing growth plan on the horizon, then they would be better off taking those profits and reinvesting them back into things like research and development, future inventions, mergers and acquisitions, etc. But chances are they don't, and they don't see any good opportunities. So that's why they'll pay out in dividends to shareholders to make them happy. Dividend investing is one of the easiest ways to create passive income, so you can get paid while you sleep, quit your job, travel the world, and reach financial freedom. But what if I told you that you should stop trying to be financially free? What if I told you that there's actually something else that's much more important that you should be chasing? Check out this video to find out what that is and why it took me so many years to realize this truth, which you can learn by just watching this video over here.